All right, Hotep or ETM Hotep, welcome in peace to our Wednesdays, Divine Words Wednesdays. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. And if you've been tuning into us, we've been kind of experimenting and doing a few things differently lately since we've become a little bit more active again. We kind of went on a break for a while. We're doing Divine Words Wednesdays, Welcome to the Sabaite Dome, and Freestyle Fridays for a good while, consistently for a good while. And so we took a break, and now we're back at it again. And we're just introducing a few new series of sessions, videos, hangouts, you name it, whether it's on Facebook Live, or YouTube. And so this is another one where, we're just patterning it after the now famous AMA or Ask Me Anything types of questions that you see floating around. We have companies and different people who have AMA sessions, whether they're a company for particular products or some formal group. You'll see that a lot lately. So this is nothing different. We're doing the same thing. Ask me anything, except we don't literally mean ask us or ask me anything out there, but obviously narrow down to the scope of the things that we discuss and deal with on a regular basis on our YouTube channel and inside of our Facebook group. So as you can see, we have Ranykemet, and Sesh Medew Netcher there as well to kind of keep it focused. Okay, so it's AMA, Ask Me Anything, and we're just going to go straight into it after first opening up with our offering formula as we're accustomed of doing. So let me share this up, and I will pass the mic over to Sonnet Imiket. Let me get this shared here. All right, the floor is all yours.
Okay, Dua. So I'm going to recite the offering formula, which you see on your screen right now. And the top part is the hieroglyphs or Sesh Medew Netcher. The middle part is what I'm going to be reciting, which is the transliteration, and then at the bottom part, that's the translation. Hotep Dinesu, Wesir, Nepjedu, Netcher Neb Abju, DF Peret Heru, T Henket, Ka Aped, Shes Menchet, Ket Nebet, Neferet, Wabet, Anket, Netcheim, Inkani Imaku, Aku Maakiru. And what it says is, an offering the king gives Osiris, Lord of Judu, great God, Lord of Abiders, so that he may give verbal offerings in beer, bread, ox, fowl, alabaster, and linen, everything good and pure on which a god lives, for the car of the revered ones, the ancestors, justified.
All right, Dua and Iker. All right, so that's how we want to set the tone, with the offering formula. And we've done previous videos about the offering formula specifically. So if you have any questions about that, just make sure you peruse through our archives. And any questions you have after that, feel free to contact us, join the Facebook group, or type your question inside the comments. All right. So moving right along, again, this is our Ask Me Anything session. And again, we don't mean literally anything in the universe, of course. I don't think anybody means that when they say it. Ask me anything, or at least you can. I mean, obviously you can ask anything, but it doesn't mean you're going to get answers to anything. But all right, so we're going to keep it dealing with Nile Valley, Kemet, Ranykemet, and Sesh Medew Netcher. And for those who don't know, Kemet is the indigenous name, one of the indigenous names of the country that we now know as Egypt, or the Arab Republic of Egypt today. Ranykemet is the indigenous name of the spoken language of ancient Kemet. And then Sesh Medew Netcher is the indigenous name of what people call hieroglyphs. All right. And it's a distinction that we always have to be mindful of between Ranykemet and Sesh Medew Netcher. Because people will say Medew Netcher, indiscriminately. They'll just say Medew Netcher all the time, and they don't make a distinction between the writing system and the spoken language, which causes confusion. All right, and that's what our job is, to eliminate the confusion as best as we can. Okay, so with Ask Me Anything or AMA nights, when we have this, we expect crowd participation. So we know we're just kicking this off, and people were unaware that this is something that we're going to start doing. So hopefully this will grow and people will chime in and ask questions. So tonight we'll open it up and we'll monitor the chat, and also we'll open it up where people can come into the panel and actually speak if that's something that people would like to do as well. Because our intention is to have as much participation as possible, because this is a learning process for us all. All right. There's those of us who have been studying for a while, and then there's those who are learning and wish to learn. And so we want to make sure that everyone is equipped with the right tools to be able to make sure that takes place. So let's just dig in. First of all, I didn't introduce myself. Reni Wujao. You heard from Sanet Imiket, and let's see, who else do we have on the panel? You can unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
ETM Hotep, welcome in peace. This is your brother June, Rennie June. My name is June. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoy the show and leave with satisfaction. Hotep.
All right. So Dua. So we have Sun June in the house. So we have myself, Sanet Imiket, and Sun June, and we're gonna hold it down, and other members may chime in. All right, so let's just jump into it. Now, I'm going to take a look at the chat. Now, remember, if you have a question, if you can, please prep your question with the screen name of the channel, Seshew Mdew Netcher. That way, when you with the @ symbol, if you type in your question inside of the chat box, put the @ symbol before it so that it will be highlighted. That way it'll stick out and we will be able to see it. There's been many times where people will have conversations inside the chat box that are not necessarily questions. So we want to be able to see it quickly. All right. So just we ask that of you, of anyone who's going to type a question out. All right. But I do see a question so far, but we're gonna get to those. But there were some questions that were asked, which actually sparked us to even do these Ask Me Anythings. So I believe Sana Emike, you had collected a couple of questions, and let's just dive right into them.
Yes, these are some of the few questions that were directed to us, and I'll just go ahead and give you the list of them. So the first question, or one of the questions that we got, was is it true that I need to know how to pronounce the language in order to understand everything?
Okay. Now, just so everyone will know, I'm hearing an echo out there. When the questions are asked, we're gonna basically share the answers, or this is a panel style reply. So the questions will be directed to us as a group, and then we'll just chime in and have a discussion, and hopefully just be able to provide the answers. Or if we don't know the answer, because we don't claim to know everything as well, but if we don't know the answer, we will at least try to give someone as a narrow direction to where we find it, or we all can research it and come back with the answers. All right, so sorry for that. Can you repeat that first question again?
Yes. Is it true that I need to know how to pronounce the language in order to understand everything?
Okay. Well, with that, now we've talked about it. We've done a few videos on that before, and I assume that question comes up quite a bit. And the short and skinny answer is no. And I always like to give the more direct answer first, and then the explanation. So the answer is no. And the reason why is because when you're translating, your translations in and of itself is a semantic endeavor. So what you're doing is you're dealing with the meanings of words. It's not a phonological endeavor or a phonetic endeavor. All right, that gets into transcriptions. Translations deal with meaning. And basically translations, as we have in our book where we explain this in detail, actually, the book being referred to is this particular book here that's on the right. Has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered? That answer is in the book. Okay, the full answer. So I'm going to just give a, abbreviated answer to that. The answer is no. And the reason why is because you don't have to be able to pronounce a word correctly or at all in order to understand it. And we do it all the time. And I'm going to show it right here, right now. So let me demonstrate this. Demonstration beats conversation, as we say, each and every time. So what I want everyone who's watching to do is to this third part at the bottom of the screen. This is the offering formula again. This is what Son of Ranykemet read earlier. The third paragraph at the bottom is in English. But what I want everyone to do is read it to yourself. Everyone who's watching, read it to yourself. Don't read it out loud, but just read it to yourself. And this is something that we do every day, all day. Even in grade school, we learned how to read something to ourselves where the classroom is quiet. You can walk into any library and find people sitting down reading and not uttering a sound. So right now you can read this third paragraph. And when you do, you did not pronounce anything, but yet you understood it. So this is an example or a demonstration of you reading, having the ability to read something, never pronouncing anything, but at the same time, fully understanding it, which supports what I just said, that pronunciations and meaning are two different things. And translations deal with meaning and not pronunciations. All right?
Man, can I add something to that? Because
Sure.
it's real weird. I was sitting here listening to you tell it, and I can give an example of how that can happen in reverse too.
Okay.
How the translation, how you were just saying, there's two different things. Pronunciation and translation are two different things. Okay, when I went to Korea in 2005, and I didn't know how to read the script, so I came across a book, learned how to read the Korean script in 40 minutes. Now, this script is pretty strict when it comes to the symbol and the sound. Like in English, how we have the A symbol, but we have at least 3 different sounds for that A symbol. But the Korean script is strict. When you see the symbol, you already know the pronunciation. And I have a pretty good memory. So I got this book, and literally in 40 minutes, I was able to memorize the script and the pronunciations and could read what I could see, written, but I didn't know the meaning. So even to this day, I can see the Korean script and read it, but my vocabulary is so low that I don't know what it's saying, but I could pronounce it.
Okay.
And that's another example of how they are separate.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because we haven't really brought that up before, that reversal. And that is very, very true, where you can actually pronounce a lot of things, even in English. We do this in English. We don't even have to go into a foreign language. We will see words, like, for example, if you go to a spelling bee or students or children that are practicing and training for a spelling bee, they will learn how to pronounce words very, very good, because there's certain rules to words. There's certain general rules that will guide the pronunciations of many words, especially if you know its etymological origin, whether it's from Latin, French, etc., etc. You'll know how to pronounce a word, but you have no idea of what it means. So even in the spelling bee, when a child is presented or a person is presented with a word, they usually have an opportunity to ask for its definition, and then they can ask for its etymology, and then they will proceed to spell it out. And so the key to a spelling bee or being able to spell something is based on understanding these rules and so on and so forth, and knowing the origin of where the language historically can come from. But you still have no idea, or possibly have no idea, what it means. So these two things are exclusive. And there's a reason for that as well. And the reason is because of what we explained before. And we have a video on it, and it's called "What is a Word?" And a word is a concept that we take for granted. We think we know what a word is, but when you really think about what is a word and you start to ponder on it, you'll find that is elusive. Like you really can't define what a word is until you actually do the study and start to really dig in deep on it. But basically, a word is something that is made up of at least 3 different elements. And so what those elements is the concept, then you have the form, and then you have the connection between the two. So you have the concept 1, form 2, and then the connection 3. And so a word is like a triune or trinity of elements together. And it's formally called a sign. And this sign is what we walk around in our minds. And remember, our mind is an abstraction. And so we walk around with these signs in our mind. And everyone that shares a group of signs together is part of the same speech community. Therefore, you can communicate with one another. Wherever the signs differ, then you can no longer communicate, because you won't be able to have that mutual intelligibility. All right, so I'll give an example. If I say the word house, house, in your mind you think of a concept, and the concept that you think of is shared by many people, which is usually a square or rectangle-ish type of structure with windows, a door, and a roof. That's the concept that will come to mind. Now, the pronunciation of that concept, or the word house itself, house, and my pronunciation of it, house, there is nothing within that concept that would dictate that we should call it house. So the concept and what we call it are arbitrary. There's nothing that would dictate or to force us to marry those two things. This is something that's arbitrarily done. And so when you make that connection of the sound house, or the form in the form of a sound house, or see it on paper in the form of a written series of letters, house, and you attach that to that concept, and you connect that, or you glue that together, that becomes the sign in your mind. Now, that's for English speakers. Now, if you are a part of the Spanish speaking community, you'll connect that same concept to a different form. Instead of the form being the pronunciation of house, or the sound house, or the written way it looks, house, you would assign that concept, or you would glue that concept to the sound casa. And visually you would spell it out casa, casa. But the concepts are the same. And because there's a match in concepts, but there's a difference in form, we can translate. That is what a translation is. A translation is the matching of a concept by way of 2 different forms that are coming from 2 different languages. One language being the source language, and the other language being the target. So now we could translate casa into the Spanish word casa into the English word house. Why? Because it matches in the same concept, a square or rectangle-ish structure that has windows, a door, and a roof. You see? And I usually use the example of an elephant, which is a very heavy gray creature with large, big ears and a long snout. And in English, we say elephant. Spanish, they say elefante. In Duluo, they say liech. And in Swahili, it's ndovo. If I'm correct, Emiket, you can correct me on that. Was that correct?
Yes, it was correct.
Okay.
And not to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say, since you actually brought that up, a good example. So to actually use that, that some people might not actually see the difference between why pronunciation and meaning. Pronunciation does not affect meaning. Something that might be easier to understand is, we know that there's a lot of people that in the process of learning some living African languages like Twi or like Swahili, for example. And you always see like this, even though they might know what the words mean, they read them, they can write them, but the pronunciations are kind of like a little bit off. And some examples that we always talk about are things like the word mfundishi, or the word people say mfundishi, and even though they know how to write the word and they know how to read the word and they know exactly what it means, but the pronunciation is not, even though it's not correct, does not affect the meaning of the word. They know exactly what it means. So but if you were to say that to a Swahili speaking person, mfundishi, they will be lost then, because the proper pronunciation will be mfundishi. Or another word like mzee, people say mz, which will be the mz-double-e. So if somebody said mz, but they know exactly what they're trying to mean, an elder, but the right pronunciation will be mzee, which are completely different. But that does not affect the meaning. The person knows exactly what it means. And these are just examples that we see on a day-to-day, especially when you're learning languages, that even though you might not be able to pronounce them correctly, or you're not even pronouncing them at all, you still the meaning still remains the same, and everybody understands the meaning if you ask the people doing that.
Okay, those are excellent examples. But can you repeat the difference between the two words again, the two sets of words again, and you say them slower, because to English speakers, though the two ways that you pronounce it may even sound identical. So if you could slow that down and do that one more time.
Okay. The two examples that I gave were the words mfundishi, which is mfundishi, which is mfundishi, but we know that people say mfundishi. And the other word is mz-double-e, which most people will say mz, but it's mze.
Okay, so I hope everyone got that, and that's a very good example.
I got the meaning for the second one, mz, elder. What's the meaning for the first one?
Mfundishi will be teacher.
Oh, okay. Dua for that.
All right, so hopefully everyone caught that and understood that. And if you have any further questions or any comments, just go ahead and type it in. So we're going to take care of these first three questions first that was given to us through Facebook, and then we're going to look at the chat and see if anyone has questions. So again, this is Ask Me Anything, with the Seshew Medew Netcher. Okay, so hopefully everyone got that one. But let me cap that off, and I want to show an example. So let me kind of put the icing on the cake, as they say, very quickly here. Like I said, demonstration beats conversation each and every time. And so we want to demonstrate as much as we can. And just pardon me for a second. Let me just get this pulled up. And I'm going to share something that I want the viewers to actually participate with. See if I can get it pulled up correctly. Yeah. All right. So let's see. And hopefully it's big enough that everyone can see. And it should be on your screen by now. Okay. So again, before I show you this, let me say again, the question about the answers to this question is found within the book. Has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered? All of these answers that we're saying now are found within the book. And what I'm sharing with you right now is a page from the book. Okay, so let me get back to that. So this is a page from the book. Okay, so I'm just going to read it. It says, it is important to remember that the ability to read and understand hieroglyphic writing on the various monuments, tombs, and stelae does not depend on proper pronunciation. Take a look at this popular internet meme. And so now what I want everyone to do is to read that paragraph. Now, obviously, if you're in the chat and you're watching, I can't hear you read it. So if you don't mind, Sunjun or Sunet Imiket, if one of you all can read that paragraph.
I'll let June read it.
Okay, so
Okay.
June, if you can see it, can you see it?
Let me try and lock it on your screen. Okay, I got it. It is important to remember that the ability to read and understand.
No, the paragraph under that. I read that part already.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah, that's why I let you read it.
Oh, okay. According to what it's supposed to say, according to a research at Cambridge, that ain't what it really say though.
No. Don't overthink it. Just read it. Just read the paragraph.
It said, according to a research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole.
All right, now stop there. Now you see how you were able to read that.
Yeah.
Okay, now for round 2, what I want you to do is try to pronounce it exactly the way it's spelled. And I know you don't have to do the whole thing. Just do the first line right there. Try to pronounce it as close as you can to the way you see it spelled.
Yeah, that's
now hold up. Now okay, go ahead, cause you now don't
to a risky arch at Cremabrid Day University it doesn't Metayer.
Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. So now what this demonstration does, now mind you, again, for everybody who is watching, and please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our channel and tick the bell so you'll be notified when we're live. But share this video for those of you who may know people who have this same question. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, and we're recording it, and we're doing it on YouTube as well as Facebook. Okay, we want to document these questions and answers so that we can continually move forward. We don't want to keep answering the same questions over and over again because people are asking the same things. Some people are asking because they just don't know. It's the first time that they come across it. And then others are rehashing old arguments, and it stifles our growth. All right, so please share the video. You can share it now, share it, when it's archived, etc. All right, so we appreciate that. But this demonstration, what this does, it lets everyone see that pronunciation is a separate issue from understanding the meaning. And again, translation is a semantic. The word semantic means meaning. So it's a semantic endeavor, or it's a meaning exercise. Okay, when you're translating, you're taking meaning from a source language and bringing it over into a target language, which is the word trans, to move. You're moving it over into a target language from a source language, irregardless of the pronunciation. And so what June just did, and this demonstrates that he read it out loud, and he understood exactly what it said. But then when he tries to pronounce it, strictly pronounce what he sees, it can't be done, or it's very, very difficult, or it makes no sense, sound like gibberish. Akorgnig, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So just remember that, and mind you, again, this is in the book. So if you have these kinds of questions, then get the book. This book is available on Amazon, by the way, Amazon.com. Has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered? A rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams and anyone else out there who makes that claim. Okay, so hopefully that pretty much answered that question. With some provided some information for that. All right, so let's get back to it. So did you have another one, Emicat?
Yes, the other question that we got was
well, let me I'm sorry, let me pause you there.
right.
Before we move forward, I just want to know if there were any comments about that. Maybe not. Okay, we'll do that second. All right, so let us go ahead and continue. I'm sorry.
No problem. So the second question is, when you translate Sesh Medew Netcher, do you do word for word translation? So they want to know if we do a word for word translation.
Okay. The short answer, again, I like to give a direct answer, as direct as possible, and then expand and expound. All right. So the short answer is no. We do not do a word for word translation. Or a more appropriate answer, short answer, would be that it depends on what the intended outcome is. Because there are some instances where you actually do a word for word translation, but you don't stop there, because sometimes you may have to reveal a word for word translation, but that's not the end. You're not finished, or you're not completed when you do that. It's like in lieu of a more dynamic translation. Okay, so the short answer is no. We don't do a word for word translation, and that's it, and we walk away. We don't do that. Okay, but now for a further explanation, again, when you're translating, it's a semantic endeavor. Okay, and in order to translate anything, you have to have at the very least two different languages. Otherwise, there'd be nothing to translate if you're only working with one language. That's not what they call translations. So you have to have two languages, and those two languages can be completely grammatically different. They have different set of rules that govern the way the internal structure of words are done and the external structure of words in sentences are done, which we know as morphology and syntax, collectively called grammar. Okay, so language A and language B can have two totally different rules or grammatical rules to it. So when you're translating from language A into language B, language A being the target language, and language A being the source language, and language B being the target language, you have to respect the grammatical rules of the target language, which would be language B, in order for it to make sense in that language. So if you were to do a word for word translation, it may violate those rules in the target language, and it will be a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Okay, or be nonsensical or nonsense, or just be totally improper. So the job of a translator is to understand that. So you have to understand both languages, and you have to understand the grammatical rules of both languages in order to have a very successful translation. All right. That's the reason why you don't do or end up doing a word for word translation, for that reason. That's one. And then you have different forms of translations. So for example, you have what's called a literal translation, or what they will call a like a formal translation, and then a dynamic translation. So you have these two different kinds of translations, and they I think the technical name is referred to as a formal equivalence translation. Then you have dynamic equivalence. So we just simply shorten it to formal versus dynamic. And a formal translation would basically deal with what we would call metaphrase, and a dynamic translation would basically correspond to paraphrase. And a lot of people are familiar with the word paraphrasing and not so much familiar with metaphrasing, because we use the word paraphrase all the time. Like if as I'm talking right now, if you wanted to repeat what I said to someone else, you may just paraphrase what I'm saying. And when you paraphrase what I'm saying, you're basically giving the gist of what I said to someone else, instead of literally quoting me or literally conveying what I said. That means you have to go word for word and make sure you get every word correctly as I said it. So, I'm just trying to make sure that the answer is kind of plain on things that we're already familiar with. But the technical terms for these two things is formal equivalence versus dynamic equivalence. Formal equivalence deals with metaphrase, and dynamic equivalence deals with paraphrase. And so what we do, and what most translators are tasked to do, is to blend the two, because you want to stay true to the original text as possible, but you have to be mindful of the rules of the target language that you are dealing with, and you don't want to lose any of the meaning. And so what's understood by translators is that there is very, very rarely a one-for-one correspondence between languages. And this is where you get that very common phrase, lost in translation. Like, something is always lost in translations. Okay, and what's lost many times are these very small, minute nuances that will be in the meanings. Okay, so this is something that's understood and should be understood by everyone who deals with either the results of a translation yourself, if you're reading one, or if you are a translator performing a translation. You have to take all of these things into considerations, under consideration. All right. So basically, again, the answer is no. We don't do a word for word, because word for word will produce some very, very difficult text, and the meanings won't be there. But what some people will do is to offer a word for word in addition to a more dynamic equivalence or dynamic translation as well. That way you can compare for yourself. And so what we recommend for people is that when you're dealing with foreign languages, or especially with Ranykemet and Sesh Medew Netcher, is that is to get books that will show the glyphs. It will show a transliteration in the word for word format, and then whatever authors or scholars translation as well. That way, at least you're exposed to more information where you can actually fact check and double check and research behind these scholars yourself. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. And if you want more information, just look up translations. Just get a book. There's some good books on Amazon Books that totally gives an exhaustive treatment on translations and semantics and different kinds and formats and theories around it. All right, so hopefully that was sufficient answer for that question.
Yeah, yeah. I think for the most part, maybe some people have seen the trilinear books, and they might actually think that, the parts where they see the word for word translation, that's what people say take to the bank or something. But as we've explained, it's not, because those are just steps like you would do in a math calculation, where you would actually show your equation before actually showing the results. So I actually haven't seen anywhere where people have actually just done a word for word translation with Sesh Medew Netcher and just left it at that. They would usually just show that to show the steps, and then do the proper translation after.
Okay, yeah. I was looking for an example in the book, if I can find one real quick here. Let's see, 1 second here. Okay, I'm gonna share this, and just to demonstrate, this is something I just happened to have pulled up, still from the same book, which is our rebuttal book. This is from a different page, but what I want to bring everyone's attention to are the glyphs that you see on the screen, the transliteration underneath it, and then the translation given. So if we were to do a word for word translation, as the question is asking, then what we would be saying is Amen, God, great, save, poor. Amen, God, great, save, poor. That will be a literal and word for word translation. Amen, God, great, save, poor. And that makes very little sense in English. That's very rigid. That's very robotic. It doesn't do anything for you. Okay. So now we have to understand the grammar between the two languages and make the necessary adjustments. Okay. So we have Amen, and then we have Netcher, which is God great, but in English we would put the adjective first, like Spanish. Spanish we say Casa Blanca, which will be house white literally in English, but we don't say it that way. We don't say house white, we say white house. So even if you saw it written in Spanish, Casa Blanca, in English you would say white house. But literally what's written there is house white. So likewise, you're looking at Netcher, bring my cursor back over here. You're looking at Netcher, which would be God great. But we would reverse it in English and say the great God. And then Nehemnejes, which would be Savior. And then these two words juxtaposed against each other is what's called a direct genitive in the grammar or the rules or what that governs the language. And so Nehemnejes is possession, shows possession. So the Savior belonging to the poor. So the Savior of the poor. Okay? So this is how and why, and a demonstration of the answer that no, we do not do word for word translations, and how we actually do translations. Okay? So remember, demonstration beats conversation every time. So if that question ever comes up, make sure you share this video with anybody. All right? So let's move on to the was there anything else with that one?
Nah, Iker.
All right, so we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, so the third question that we have is, did the 10 commandments come from the 42 laws of Ma'at? And for instance, like I have not killed, or thou shalt not kill, and things of the nature. So they want to know if the 10 commandments come from the 42 laws of Ma'at.
Okay, yeah, that question pops up quite a bit. I think that question comes because there are people who are out there that make that claim, that they make the general blanket claim that the Bible comes from, the Bible was plagiarized from Kemet, or the Bible was stolen, the scripts, the text from the Bible are stolen, or the stories are stolen from Kemet, and so on. I've heard that many times over the years, and so that's like an ongoing debate between those people that do that. I know us here, Seshew, mdw-ntr, Netcher, we don't make those claims because it's really no value in making that claim when you can't really unpack the claim and show. It's one of those things that, you know, it's hard to falsify. So it's a better way of having that discussion. But in that specific question, though, do the 10 Commandments come from the 42 laws of Ma'at, as they say? And you said, thou shalt not kill. There is one of the Declaration of Innocence that does, where a person does declare that they have not killed another person. And one of the 10 Commandments says the same thing. Now, there are people who will make a fuss about those two things being different, and they'll use the word kill versus the word murder. And they'll home in or focus on the difference between the words kill and murder. And so what people have to understand is that we have words that are called synonyms. So if I were to say, and you can look this up in a thesaurus, if you look up the word slaughter, you look up the word kill, you look up the word murder, they have very similar meanings and they could be used as synonyms of each other. Only in specific contexts are those words used with any kind of specificity. So, for example, in the legal venue in the court system, they are specific with the word murder, and they have legal definitions of what murder is. And if you look up the word murder in the legal jargon or in the legal environment, they will add a very important nuance to that, which is malice and intent. Okay, not even so much intent, because, for example, the reason why I say that is because let's take the word slaughter and murder. Now, most people would think that those are different words, and they could mean different things, etc., etc. All three of those words that I mentioned earlier, slaughter, murder, kill, all three of them result in the cutting off of life. So I think everybody will agree with that. But then when you slaughter an animal to eat it, you intend to do that. Your intent is to take the life of that animal. If you are trying to murder someone, even in the context that's used in the court system, legal system, you are said to have intended to kill someone. If you intended to kill someone, they would call it murder. If you intended to kill an animal, they don't call it murder, though. So I'm saying that to show you that the reason why these three different words are people may nitpick at these three different words is because of the context that surrounds it. So again, if you intend to kill an animal to eat it, they will call that slaughter. They don't call it murder. They don't call a cow, where they go kill cows for the beef that you see in the supermarket, stuff like that. They don't call it a murder house. They call it a slaughterhouse. You see what I'm saying? So they don't call it that. But that's what they're doing. They intend on not only do they intend to kill the cow, but they premeditate it because they grow the cow. They feed the cow to fatten the cow up, and the chickens. They feed the chickens to fatten them up with the future intent to kill it. That's intent. That's what do you call it? Premeditative. Everything that you would describe as a murder, they do it to animals, but they don't call it murder. Okay, so this is where people say, okay, that is all semantics, and that's absolutely right. These are semantic nuances. These are nuances in the semantic scope based on the content and context of where and when the word is used. Okay, so that should be clear. Hopefully that's clear to everyone. So those people who want to be a stickler and say, okay, thou shalt not kill or I have not killed is different than thou shalt not murder or I have not murdered anyone. Okay, so I want to cover that first. And so then in the language of Ranykemet, there are several words that are used for these different nuances. And we have to remember, we have to look at the cultural context as a whole now as well for why there are different words that are used for taking a life. Okay, now the word that is used in the 42 negative confession, the word that is most used, I should say, is the word sama. All right, and I wish I had the glyphs where I can show it on the screen, but I don't, so I apologize for that. Or maybe I could actually quickly do it up, or if one of you all can open up JSesh and do it while I'm talking, maybe we have time to show it. But anyway, in the Egyptian language of Ranykemet, there's a word that's used in the negative, what they call the negative confessions, but it's really the declarations of innocence. The word that's mostly used is sama, and it comes from a verb which means to slay, to slaughter. And so the reason why they use that particular word is because in those days, obviously they didn't have guns or anything. When someone was killed or an animal was killed, it was usually done by knife, by some sharp object. Okay, and this connects into something else. Maybe we can talk about this another time, but it deals with oaths and the word life. Why the word unk is a word for taking an oath. And then we have another word, unk, that we would pronounce the same way and everything, that means life. And how when you take an oath today, people will solidify that oath by some shedding of blood. And under the Abrahamic traditions, they would shed blood to form these covenants, the covenants of the flesh. So they would either have to shed blood of an animal, or they would have to shed blood of a human in the form of circumcision or what have you in the Abrahamic belief system, where you're taking these oaths and making these agreements. They call it covenants, but it's simply a contract, an agreement. Well, likewise, in Africa, contracts are sealed and oaths are taken by way of the shedding of blood. And so you give your life, etc. But that probably goes off into another topic. But what I'm pointing out is that the taking of life was usually done by a sharp object, a knife. And the word sama is to cut, to slaughter, or to kill by way of a knife. And in the context, in the different literature that you find that word used in, it's also used in what we would call today in the legal system as murder. Okay, so again, this ties back into the other question about translations. Translation is not a one-for-one type of thing. It takes some science to it, and there's some art to it. And you have to understand the two or more languages, and you have to understand the nuance and the cultural background, the cultural backdrop that both languages that you're dealing with are involved. Okay? So hopefully that's understood.
Yeah, I got the word on my screen.
Okay, let me get that shared over there. Okay, 1 second. Let me get that shared over. 1 second here. Okay, if you take the word that you have, and all right, let me see if I can share your screen. Get this over here. Not sure why it's taking forever, but okay, there we are. So hopefully everyone can see it on the screen. So we have the word sama. And it means slaughter. And if you notice that it's determined by a knife, two determinatives, a knife and a hand and arm with a weapon inside of it. That hand and arm is a classifier for words that mean force. And the knife is a classifier for things that cut. Okay, that involves some type of cutting. So forceful cutting. Cutting that takes some kind of force. So sama is the word that means slaughter, to slay, to kill, to murder. Okay, so the context would dictate the nuance of the meaning. So for those who will try to separate this word from the legal term murder, they do so in error. And they do so out of ignorance of how this word is used in actual Egyptian literature. And if you look all throughout the pyramid texts, you will find this word being used for murder. In the same context that we would use today for murder, which is the taking of another person's life. You also see it used for killing animals. That today we wouldn't call that murder. We would just call it slaughter. All right. So we have to be mindful of the context and everything like that. So hopefully that's good enough. That's sufficient enough to answer that question about. But so to back up and review real quick, whether the 10 Commandments came from the 42 declarations of innocence or not will be something that will be pretty difficult to definitively falsify or to prove, as they say. But you can see similarities between what's declared in the 42 declarations of innocence and those 10 commandments. Now, if that's enough to say that, okay, these people copy from these people, whatever, or if it was a direct copy, if it's plagiarism, those things is what occupies the mind of people who want to debate those kinds of things. That's something that we don't get involved with. All right. So hopefully that was sufficient. Was anything else with that, or it was another one?
Those are the questions that we got, but I think we had some questions from the chat as well.
Okay, so let's back up. Let me go to the chat. And so again, I want to say ETM Hotel for those who are watching, and appreciate everyone viewing. And like I said, we are starting up this series of hangouts and shows where we call it AMA Seshew, or AMA with the Seshew, or ask me anything, which is really ask us anything, dealing with Kemet, Ranykemet, and Sesh Medew Netcher. All right, so again, dua for tuning in. And so I'm gonna go through so we have Jehudi Bakhmat. Can you talk about when and why the Magi stopped being employed to defend Kemet? Okay. Matter of fact, that's a good question, and I don't want to appear that we're gonna dodge that question, but that question is actually, or the answer to that question is actually something that we are going to prepare as a presentation. So if you don't mind being a little patient, we'll present it as one of our Divine Words Wednesdays, where we're going to talk about the Magi, okay, and who are the Magi, and so the answer will be within that, okay. So, just kind of hold your seats for that. All right. So we want to, I don't want to make it seem like, I'm dodging it, but that's something that we had already planned, or is on the table for us to do a presentation on it. Okay. And for those who don't know who the Magi are, even on the surface of, like, who are the Magi? I've never heard of that word, or whatever the case is. The Magi, as the question implies, the Magi was part of a quote unquote mercenary type of army that fought on behalf of Kemet. Okay. Also, what people need to know is that Maja, not Magi, but Maja or Medja is an actual territory, geographical territory that is south of Kemet, beyond the borders of Kemet, in what is called Ta Nehisi. There were several different communities below Kemet or south of Kemet. Medja is one of them. And so the Medjai or the Magi are people that were from that area. And in Africa, all throughout Africa, entire family lineages, entire families were usually responsible for one trade or one specialty. So you have a whole family of weavers, a whole family of scribes, a whole family of soldiers, a whole family of bricklayers, a whole family of chefs, a whole family of fishermen, a whole family of farmers, and lineages. That's basically how Africans, and even to this day, it still goes on that way. Even among the Italians, you see it a lot of in Hollywood movies with different ethnic groups, even today, where families will pass on the trade from father to son, from mother to daughter, and it will expand in the family. Cousins and uncles and everybody do the same thing. Okay, to the point where entire geographical locations and the people among them were known as specialty in a certain skill set. For example, the Pageti, the 9 bows of Tasseti. People who were skillful at the bow and arrow, etc. So just give you an example. But anyway, we're going to touch on that. And you Son of Emiket and Sunjun, if you see a question I'm skipping, let me know, because I'm just scrolling down, trying to make sure we get to these questions here.
Yeah, there's 3 more that I've seen up to date, but I don't know if you might be able to overlook them because they were not addressed to Sesh Medew Netcher, but I could read them if you'd like. It saves time.
Yeah. I mean, if it's an obvious question, yeah, we can still address it. Yep.
Okay. So there was another question from Nip74. He said, "Hello all. Did all the people speak Medew Netcher or only the ruling class?"
Okay, that's a good question, and I just lost it. Okay, there it is. Okay, so well, first of all, I'm doing all the talking. I'm hogging the mic. It's like hogging the basketball. So let me pass the basketball. So Sun June or Son at Emiket, if any of these questions you wanna add on to or chime in on, feel free.
Well, we gotta make the distinction between the spoken language and the script. What we call Sesh Medew Netcher is the writing script, and that's the writing script, and the spoken language was called Ranykemet. So we got to make the distinction between language and the spoken language and the script. So for that question, that's we have to say we had to say no, they didn't speak the writing script, but I would say they spoke Ranykemet, and of course there are different dialects. Kemet reigned for thousands of years, so of course the language that was in use was changing with it.
Okay, excellent.
I think it's good that you made that that there's a distinction between a spoken language and a writing system, and obviously you don't speak a writing system. So when it comes to a language, and you have to understand that languages, they come before writing systems. So writing systems are pretty much new inventions and not so old. So but language when you're talking about spoken language, everybody speaks. If you're in an area where people are speaking a particular language, then everybody speaks that language. So when it comes to the writing system, then just like English and all other languages, we can speak English, but not everybody can read or write. In that sense, that's just in all different cultures. So that's something that I think everybody's aware of, that not everybody can read or write a script in their language, but the language people can speak it. So it will be the same scenario in any culture at any given time.
Okay, excellent. I think that says it all. The only thing I would add to that is because that question gets asked a lot, and it's good that it's clarified between the difference between the spoken language and the writing system, and that's why I started off by making that clear that Ranykemet is different than Sesh Medew Netcher, and the fact that people kind of just gloss over and say Medew Netcher, and not really understanding that difference. So that's good that you pointed that out, that you all pointed that out. All right. So and if you really think about it, it's common sense, and it goes into what I said about a speech community of what a word is. In order for people to communicate, they have to share the same signs in the mind. Once you get around people who don't share the same signs as you do, you can't communicate with them. And so the only way that Kemet could thrive and flourish the way it did was that people communicated. There's no way that you would be able to build such monumental structures, such as the Great Pyramids, the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza, or any of the pyramids, any of the temples, and do all the things that Kemet is known for without communicating. There's no way. Okay, so I just wanted to add the kind of common sense aspect of it, so everyone had to be able to communicate. All right. So let's move to another one. Let's see. I do see Nip says, how can I purchase the book you're referencing, and would I need an instructor to learn the information in the book? Okay, that's a good question. I believe I mentioned to everyone that the book is available on Amazon.com. If you look up the title, you can quickly search and look up the title. As a matter of fact, I will post a link up as we're talking and going through these. I'll post a link in here. That way you can go straight to it. Okay, so matter of fact, let me do that now, and that way we can get it taken care of right away. So let's go, and I will post the link. That's the direct link to it. Okay, and if that doesn't work by any chance, just make sure you look up, has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered? A rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams. All right. And the second part is, do you need an instructor to learn the information in the book? Absolutely not. You can read it from cover to cover, and you should be able to get it. And we're available, though. We're available if you have questions. Okay, so we're available, but we did our best to write it where you don't need to be you don't need your hand held or your mind babysat. Okay, but if you have any questions, feel free. That's what we're here for. Another question I see is from Sayamasundara. I know I probably butchered that name, and I apologize. But Adudua. It says, do you agree with Champollion's work on the Medew Netcher? The answer to that is also addressed in the book. So you all please get the book. Please support. I mean, getting the book will support us. Support our future endeavors, and then also it will reward. You'll be rewarded because there's a wealth of information in the book. Okay, so the full answer is in the book, but I'll give a short, skinny answer, and the answer is, for the most part, yes. And the reason why is because Champollion, but see, like I said, the full answer is in the book. Champollion is not the only person involved with the quote-unquote decipherment process. Champollion is given credit for it, but there was a lot of people involved and a lot of trial and error that took place in it. Then after Champollion, there were some testing and checks that were done. So when the question is asked, do we agree with Champollion's work on it, it's like a yes and no type of answer. We have to answer with an explanation. Okay, but for the most part, Champollion was definitely on the right track and got a lot of things correct. And for one, the biggest thing that helped him was his understanding or his break away from the mentality that the Sesh Medew Netcher is an actual writing system. Because you got to remember, as explained in the book, there were people for years, decades, that believed that the hieroglyphs, as they called it, wasn't even a writing system. They thought it was just beautiful symbols that represented symbolic, mystical, magical things to these Africans in Egypt that they don't even admit. They try to avoid calling them African. You see, so Champollion and others, like I said, others, actually there's people before Champollion that started to entertain the idea that the hieroglyphs was a writing system and not just some pictorial, mystical, magical pictures. You see, and so you have to understand what a writing system is, and we go through the details in the book. All right, so so hopefully that answers the question. So the answer is a yes or no, or an answer with an explanation, and that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book. So I don't want to butcher the explanation in the book when the whole answer is given in the book. And it took a book for us to kind of fully break it down. Okay. Okay, so let's see another question. And mind you, if I miss one, let me know. So I'm just going down the list. So we have Nasir. Can you explain why Remich does not appear to be spelled out in the Sesh, but the M sound is implied? Okay, that's a good question. Hopefully I understand what you mean, but I think I do. So the word Remich is often spelled without the M. There are instances, which are rare, where the M is spelled or the M is included. But that's not unique to that word Remich. There are many words where there are glyphs that are omitted. And so in order to understand why this is done, is you have to understand the scribal profession and their what they prefer to do. And what the scribes did is that when they drew or carved these characters or these glyphs, they paid a lot of attention to aesthetics. They had to make sure everything was in order and aesthetically pleasing. So they created a quadrate system, which is imaginary rectangles and squares that they put the glyphs in. Because remember, when they carve the glyphs, there's no punctuation, there's no commas, no periods, no spaces, none of that. You don't know where a sentence ends. You don't even know where a word ends, technically, as far as the glyphs are concerned. So they had to create a sense of order, which in ancient times it would be equivalent to what we say would be the orthography. A script's orthography is the equivalent to the language's grammar. And the orthography of a script is basically the rules of the script. How it's written, the spacing, capitalized, uncapitalized, all those kinds of things that involve with the script. So the scribes had a form of that. And so what they did for certain words, they omitted glyphs in order to keep it aesthetically pleasing. Some glyphs they even put out of order. But now these are exceptions. Now you don't find it a lot, but you will find it. And the word Remich is simply one of those words. where the owl, which will be an owl, is removed for simplicity and for aesthetically pleasing situations. We have rim, rimage. Okay, so like I said, it's not unique to the word rimage, but that question usually leads to the question of, well, how do you know it's really rimage and not just wretch? And without the M, it's just wretch, and so on and so forth. And the answer is simple. There is attested forms where you will see the M there, and it won't be the owl. It will be what's called the half, which is a glyph that I don't have it prepared and shown on the screen, but maybe if you join our Facebook group, I will include that. I can show that. As a matter of fact, let me give you the Gardner code. You can look it up yourself if you're familiar with the Gardner codes. It is quickly. Let me let you know what glyph that is that I'm referring to. It is Gardner code AA15. All right, which is a variant of AA13. So if you look up AA13, AA14, AA15, AA16, actually from AA13 through AA15, if you look up those glyphs right there, you'll see exactly what I'm referring to, which is an alternative way of representing the consonant M as in Mary. That's not the owl. All right, so hopefully that answers that question. Let's see, was there anyone? Got the book, still reading. Okay, Master Cleek. Okay, yeah, Master Cleek, if you have the book, read it. If you have any questions, we're always available. Any one of us. All right. Oh, and Nip says thank you for that. Okay, I see we do have a picture of it. Sonnet Emiket is on it. And this is excellent. So Eker. So this is the word remich, which means men, mankind, and people. And so what the question is asking is, if you notice, Emiket, you wanna explain what those glyphs are right now?
Two. So the glyphs that we have on the top, obviously just to show the direction, so you know where I'm starting from. We are reading the glyphs from left to right. So from left to right, on the top we have the mouth, and then at the below it we have the tethering rope, and then we have the raised bread loaf, and then the next one we have a seated man and a seated woman, and then we have the three strokes below them, and the mouth is for the phonetic sound R, and the tethering rope is for the sound ch, and then the raised bread loaf is for the T sound, and these are monoliterals. And then we have the determinatives, where we have the seated man and the seated woman, and then the three strokes to show plurality.
All right, Eker. So the question, for those people who may not understand why the question is asked, is because you do not see the M. Excuse me, you do not see the M, a glyph that represents the consonant M, as in Mary. And so that was why the question was asked. And so now hopefully my answer makes a little more sense, that the M is omitted many times, and this is not unique to this particular word, but certain glyphs are omitted for aesthetic reasons, for visual reasons, and to hold true to the quadrant system, which is an imaginary rectangle or square. All right.
Yeah, another word that we also see where some letters or some glyphs are omitted is like the word nehe. And that's for like you explained, for aesthetic purposes, where we see the twisted flax, and then we have the sun glyph, and then another twisted flax.
Okay.
So that's another one.
Okay, if it's not too much, could you put that up next while we're talking, and then I'll share that one.
All right.
Okay. since you brought it up. But that's an excellent example. That's another excellent example. Okay, so let's go. Keep going. I was saying Nip 74 said, "Cool, thanks for answering my question. I didn't know there was a difference between the written and spoken. That helps." Okay, good. Odudua, and forgive me on your first name. Is it are any glyphs geographical locations? For example, the Ankh. I have family on the continent, and they told me that it is to them. Just curious to hear your answer. Okay, now that example, no. But the answer to your actual question, yes. There are glyphs that represent geographical locations, yes. And we refer to those as toponymic glyphs, or they are glyphs that represent toponyms. And they are a class of glyphs that represent place names. Toponyms are place names. And so you will have a glyph called, for example, Niut. And Niut is a circle with what I call it the X-Men belt buckle, because it looks like a circle with an X in it. That's what it looks like, for people who want to know what it looks like. But it's Gardner code O, as in the letter O, 49. And it represents a place where there's a community of people, or a place where there's a assembly of people. And they usually say it's a crossroads, the crossroads glyph, etc., etc. You have that particular glyph. Then you have the triple hills, which I believe is Gardner code N, as in Nancy, 25. That's the triple hills, and they represent the word chasset. And that is also a toponymic glyph that represents places. All right. Then you have the water channel glyph. And I believe that is Gardner code. I don't want to tell anyone the wrong one, so let me look it up first. And mind you, we also have videos where we're showing people how to look up glyphs in what they refer to as a sign list. All right. Which is what I'm doing right now. There's a water channel glyph, which is Gardner code N36. And then there's also another water channel glyph that is N23. These glyphs represent toponyms, or a class of words that would represent place names, toponyms. All right. Now, in particular to what you asked about, the Ankh being a geographical location, there are places that may be named and have the word Ankh in it, but the glyph in and of itself, as a geographical location or reference to that, the answer is no, because of what the glyph is and everything. Okay, so hopefully that is understood. Okay, June, I see the picture that you're sharing. If you could share it, I don't know if you can share it by way of your phone, and then I'll put it on the screen. But hopefully that addressed that answer, that question. And I'm going to share Emiket's screen with the example that she was given before. So Emiket, I don't know if you want to break it down.
Okay. Yes. So on the screen you see 3 glyphs, and there's 2 twisted flags on the left and on the right side, and then in the middle we have the sun. And if you were to translate it the way you see it, it would be heh. So we don't see the determinative, which is in the middle, but we don't see the n for the word nehe. So this one is omitted by the scribe. Sometimes we'll see it as well with it, but we see it omitted here, and it's only done just for aesthetic purposes. And like Siba Ujao explained about fitting the glyphs in quadrant blocks. or within rectangles or squares that appear to be more pleasing. If it's written this way, everything balances a little bit better than if the water ripple was added to it and then and written the proper way that you would actually have it. So yeah, pretty much that's it. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And so so this is the way that you'll see it most of the time, but then there's a fuller way to spell it out. And I don't know if you had that as well, but there's a fuller way to spell it out so you can see the difference between the two. But that will be done for aesthetic reasons. And we refer to that process as graphic transposition, which is different from honorific transposition. So we have honorific transposition that takes place in the writing system. Then we have graphic transposition, where they would transpose glyphs to keep true to the aesthetically pleasing methods that the scribes were very, very sticklers for. Okay, so hopefully that went back and addressed that. Okay, so now it said Adudua says that's your. He emphasizes your with caps. Answer. Thank you for taking the time out to explain. Well, see, when people emphasize things like that, we have to deal with that. Now I want to correct that. That is not my answer. Obviously, everything I'm saying are my words that are coming out of my mouth. But to imply that that's my answer, to make that an issue, with the caps, let's deal with that for a quick second. As I said, demonstration beats conversation each and every time. So if there is a place name or glyph that represents a place, then what needs to be produced is the place, the name of the place. So that we can actually, have a fuller discussion about it. What I would ask you is that you said you have family on the continent and they told you that the Ankh is to them a place, a geographical location. So I would need to know from you or you from them, if you don't already know, what is this location? Where is it on a map? And what is the name? And then we can continue the conversation so that we all can benefit and learn from this. But I just want to make it clear that when we separate, okay, your answer versus this answer and stuff like that, that's where, if everything was like that, then it'd be no point in us pursuing the facts or the reality or the truth if everybody's entitled to just give their versions of things. It doesn't quite work out that way. So we want to make sure that we stay true to the customs. Even in African traditions, you have what's called tep hesep, which is proper methods in order to know when you know something, which is what the word science means. It is the methods and tools that allow us to know when something is known. All right. And we shave off the erroneous, the falsehoods, the incorrectness and things like that. It's always a cutting away. That's what the word science means: to cut, to divide, to shave away the wrong or incorrect. All right, what leaves us is the correctness, and this is where the scientific method deals with falsifying claims, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so we want to make sure that we are fully in compliance with those traditions. All right, but to continue the conversation, I would be interested into knowing, where is this place that's being referred to on the map, and what is the name? All right, and so hopefully you can provide that. If not now, then sometime in the future, and then we could pick up on the conversation. I think that would be very interesting. Okay, so let's go forward. Jador Spirit says, what are some examples? Okay, before I move forward, I see Sun Jun, or someone had it shared on the screen. Now it's gone.
Oh yeah, that was Sanjun. You're sharing now.
Okay. So Sunjun, you want to explain what you have on the screen?
Yeah. I wasn't able to put the links over into the YouTube chat, but I put them in our back chat. It's a obelisk. I'm not sure the location. I was looking for that, but we see Kemet spelled out with the owl, and then a location, the determinative for a location, and then that word.
Okay.
So I know we saw it earlier, and usually we do see it with fewer glyphs, and not the owl, or as you said, the half.
Mm-hmm.
But this on this obelisk is just one example.
Okay, excellent. That's an excellent example. So the glyph that I was referring to, which is 049, you see it, which is a circle, looks like an X, and I nickname it just for so people know what I'm talking about. I say it's the X-Men belt buckle, glyph, so to speak. So, but that's a determinative that's used for a toponym. All right, so just want people to understand, so that's a good example of what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. All right, and actually that's the word Kemet. Okay, so Kemet, the word Kemet, that's how it looks. That's one way of spelling it, and a different way is instead of that owl that would be there, you'll see the half, which I said is AA15, AA14, or AA13 glyph. If you're familiar with the Gardner codes. Okay, just and that's also a confirmation of how the owl in the writing system were interchanged with that particular glyph. Okay, so just to keep moving forward, let's see.
Hold on. Let me give a shout out, because this makes me think of our brother Asarim Hotep. Shout out to the brother, but I know he had that post in our group asking what people think that first glyph is. I know he's doing some work on that, and other work for his upcoming book that I'm anticipating. I'm waiting for that. So yeah, shout out to that brother.
Okay, sorry, Motep. If those people are familiar with, that's Harold Johnson on Facebook. All right, our good brother Asar Motep. Okay, so let's go to the next question. What are some examples of the language and tradition of Kemet being used in our communities to transform and deal with our social ills? I know of funeral services being given, but what other examples? Okay. Let me read it one more time. What are some examples of the language and tradition of Kemet being used in our communities to transform and deal with our social ills? That's a good question, and it's probably deserves a long answer. But I'm just gonna give a short answer, and then maybe we could revisit it as its own topic in the future. So brother Jador Spirit, make sure you you bring this question back up again, or hopefully you'll be part of a longer discussion about that. But just quickly, some of the things that are used, a lot of things are used that come out of the traditions in the Nile Valley, or Kemet specifically, that we use, that we're unaware of the fact that we use them. Okay, so for example, the scientific method, which is a method that is the human endeavor to rule out mistakes. It was codified and discussed and intentionally structured in Kemet. And today we know it as the various different scientific methods of knowing when we know something, or knowing when something is known. and we do it all day, every day. The fact that now you're asking about the ills in our community, so I'm not really addressing that. But science, the scientific method, is a very, very indispensable tool that we use to problem solve, and it's something that we do and need to do in our communities to solve our problems, or as you say, ills in our communities. But there's a lot of people who don't do it and don't utilize it, but it's available to us. Okay, and this is why we promote scientific literacy, people to become more scientifically inclined, more scientifically literate, in order to utilize these tools to solve our problems. Okay, we need a culture that is rooted in science, and that's what Kemet was about. It was a culture that was deeply rooted in science. All right. Some foreigners looked at that science as magic or mystical or mysteries. All right. And you get into these different words that they translate as magic and so on and so forth, but it's really science. All right. And the difference between science and magic is that if you know how something is done, the who, what, where, when, why, and hows, then you call it science. If you don't know how something is done, but yet you see it done, you simply refer to it as magic, because you just simply don't know how it's done. That's why a magician performs a trick. To the magician himself, he knows what he's doing. It's science to him. It's a skill to him. But to the audience who don't know what he's doing or how he's doing it, it's magic. They call it magic. Okay, so this culture that people are trying to describe as the Kemetic culture and so on and so forth, as mysterious as, the mystery schools and mystery and secrets and all this and that, to the people themselves who were involved, who were in it, it's science. And this is true to this very day in a lot of African communities and initiatory systems. If, like, for example, even among the Freemasons today, if you're not a Freemason, if you've never seek entrance to become a Freemason, and you don't know what goes on and what they teach and all this and that, you're gonna look at it as mysterious. You may even turn raise your eyebrows against it and demonize it and say, hey, it's Illuminati and all that kind of stuff. But to the people who participate in it, it's none of that. I'm just showing you an example of difference. But anyway, so science is one of them, just science as a whole, and we can get into a lot more details with that in a very long, much longer conversation about that.
Okay, go ahead, Sanjun.
No, you can go ahead. I just wanted to get some in on that.
Oh, okay. Now I was just I was gonna quickly say that another example is we have to remember that when the instructions that were given to scribes, apart from being literary text and teaching mathematics and all the other sciences and grammar and all that, they also use as didactic text, the teaching moral behaviors. And we had two shows that were dealing with good character and all of that. And some of the things that this kind of text help with is also just to teach good character. And we had those with the text like teachings of Dua Uketi and Tahotep and all that. So those are some of the benefits that actually can be that we can get from learning the language and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, June, you had something to add?
Oh yeah. This is addressing that question. Because I know that starting to study and learn this stuff has changed me in my thinking. And I know he had said communities, but a lot of the African, tradition and paradigm, it was like micro macro. So before we can change the community, a lot of us gonna have to first change ourselves in our house. You start with yourself, then you change, make sure everything's straight in your house, and then we can move on to making sure the community is straight. So I just wanted to say, from starting at that level, there is a lot of benefits to learning and knowing this stuff. It might not be understood until you actually get into the study, to where you can notice it and understand it. But that's what I wanted to add on that.
Okay, and a thing that I would add, like I said, I think that question is deserving of a long conversation. But what I would add for now is that there are many things that could be applied and implemented that will help us in our communities, that will help solve our problems, that would come out of Kemet. But the difference is, or the real question is, are those things being applied? So there's a difference between what's available as a resource in Kemet versus what's actually being used. And so Kemet has a wealth of resources that will and would help us in our communities and to solve our problems. But a lot of those things are not being used today, even by many people who are who would say that they are followers of quote unquote Kemetic traditions. And the main reason why is because the information and knowledge that people know about Kemet, it comes to them by way of a less rigorous process where people are getting half information, misinformation, and some people are just making things up, and it becomes non-effective to them on a personal level and to us, at large on a community level. And so we have to straighten all that stuff out. We have to get all that stuff straight first. So there's a whole bunch of valuable resources in the Nile Valley, in Kemet, in Africa, period, but specifically in the Nile Valley because it's one of the, it's the most documented ancient culture and civilization on the continent. There's many great kingdoms and civilizations, but Kemet is the most documented. It has the artifacts. You go in museums around the world, they have thousands of artifacts, documents, papyri, stelae, writings are everywhere in Kemet. Okay, so we have these things available to us, but the question is, do people know how to extract the information out of it? And the answer for the most part is no. A lot of people do not even understand the basics of the language in order to even understand what the ancestors said. So this is one of our battle cries as the Sesh Medew Netcher, and why we even do what we do. The gatekeeper is the language itself. Anybody who's out there professing to be a Kemetic scholar, or I should say Kemetic teacher, Kemetic priest, priestess, and so on and so forth, all the above, they should be required or held responsible for having some kind of competency or proficiency in the language, in the ability to read and understand the language, the writing system and the language, period. And those who don't, they are handicapped. And if they're handicapped, then they're going to handicap all those who they influence. And so we have to get all of that stuff straight. And once we get that straight, we'll start seeing more of positive effects of what Kemet has to offer. But we have to get that straight. And there are people out there that are doing it. So I don't want to make it sound like nobody's doing it. But there's far too many people who are not doing it, or may not even be aware. And so that's one of our jobs, is to make people aware. And so that's why we do what we do, is to make people aware. And there's a whole lot of things that we had to straighten out, because there's a lot of misinformation out there that has to be addressed. And a lot of it won't be addressed. We just don't have time. And some of it's just too silly to even address. But the ones that have to, deserving of being addressed, those will be addressed, and hopefully people will learn from it, benefit from it, and we can keep it moving and grow, and we can mature, and we can put respect back into the traditions of the Nile Valley, the people of the Nile Valley. All right. But, like I said, that topic would deserve a long conversation, because it gets into, we could show examples. We could show examples of what's being done, and what's a direct, what direct influence that Kemet has on us today in our communities. There's a list of things we could start talking about and name. And then we can name some things that should be, that people don't do, but should do, or should apply, and everything, or can apply. All right. So hopefully that kind of addressed it. But that deserves a show in and of itself. Maybe even several parts. Now it's 12:09, on the East Coast. So we're not going to do this too much longer. So I'm going to try to speed things up a bit and go through a couple more questions. So we have Michael Brantley. Okay, so we have Michael Brantley. Do determinatives have any function besides clarifying meaning? I've briefly seen some claims that they help with pronunciation. That's a good question, and there's ways that particular question can be investigated, I should say. And so that involves the tool that's available to us, which is historical comparative linguistics, which allows us to know the related languages, lingo-genetic related languages. And therefore, we can set up words that are in sibling languages of each other and see how these words are pronounced, spelled, and their meaning, and so on and so forth. And then you can actually look at the writing system of Sesh Medew Netcher and start to make those determinations. And so what you're seeing is that what some people are hypothesizing is that the determinatives may have some kind of effect on the way a word is pronounced. And so that is still some research that has to be done. There's a lot of work that still has to be done in that area. All right, so I don't want to tell you one way or the other. But I can say this, that there are a lot of words that have already been checked that where determinatives are not part of the pronunciation. Now the thing is that with Sesh Medew Netcher, there's no documentation of vowels. And so when the hypothesis is put forward, there, most of the time, people are referring to the way that the word is pronounced by way of its vowels. Okay, so just, but further research is underway. As a matter of fact, I think Dr. Mubabenge Bilolo is one of the scholars that is entertaining or researching and investigating that question. So again, Mubabenge Bilolo, or Dr. Bilolo. All right. Let me go further down here. Okay, Nasir says, so it has nothing, he's referring to the Ranykemet question, has nothing to do with sounds getting fossilized visually. Well, no, they wouldn't refer to that as fossilization, but I understand what you mean. These are graphic things. So, for example, a lot of time the quail chick, which will be a morpheme we would transliterate as a W. A lot of times those are omitted in words, but yet they're there. They're omitted visually. So the quail chick, you won't see it. And so, but linguistically, we wouldn't refer to that as fossilized visually, just to let you know. But I understand what you mean. But these are visual things that the scribes did. You have graphic transposition going on. You have the aesthetic quadrant system that we spoke about earlier. And then you have words that are very, very common. And today we would call those abbreviations. So abbreviations did take place in ancient times. Okay, 93 Avaris. Wajao, did they ever find Ptahhotep's mummy? If you're talking about the Ptahhotep that's made reference to in the Sabaite or the instructions of Ptahhotep. That I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that. Anybody else on the panel have information on that?
None.
Okay, but that's something that we could look into. But as of right now, no, I don't have any information on that. Let's see. I'm just trying to look for some more of the questions. Okay, yeah. Second Ra gives a good example. Even a magician says, okay, well, if I show you how I do my trick, then it's not magic anymore, and that's absolutely right because magic is a phenomenon of ignorance. In order for something to be magic or magical, it has to involve ignorance on the part of a person, because once you know, it's no longer magic. And that's just as simple as that. Once you know. So magic and science are opposites of each other. Science deals with knowledge, magic deals with beliefs and ignorance. You have ignorance versus knowledge, science versus magic, science versus pseudoscience. All right. Next one. Try to speed things up a bit. Michael Brantley, thank you. A better question would be, is there a reasonable possibility some determinatives assist with pronunciations? So that's what I was getting to. And I believe it's Dr. Mubabenge Balolo who is actually actively investigating that with his language, the Chiluba language. And so if you want to dig in more with that, matter of fact, let me see if I can type his name in correctly for you.
I already did it now.
Oh, you did? Okay. Excellent. So make sure you look into his work. And get his books and his latest materials. So I think he's one that's actively dealing with that question. All right. And hopefully that will help you out. But there are a lot of words that are looked at where the determinative is a orthographic phenomenon that helps with the semantic. So, like for example, the reason why it's there's a hypothesis or several of them out there. Let me give you an example. Let me see if I can have one pulled up quickly. I'll pull up something very quick here. Let's see if I can do this fast. Let's see. We'll go up to here. 5. Okay. All right, so I'm going to show this example here, and this is will be to demonstrate a point about the determinatives. Oh, I guess I will have to make sense for me to change it around. Give me 1 second here. And that dead silence. All right, here we go. So on the screen now that you see, and this is dealing with I think Nasir's question, to kind of expound on it a bit. On the screen we have an example of 4 words, and this is coming out of the beginner's introduction to Sesh Medew Netcher. All right, this is the textbook that's used for the beginner study course. Okay, this is in chapter 5, dealing with chapter 3, dealing with the functions of the glyphs. But anyway, this is an example of 4 words with the verb win, which means to exist. Now, Egyptologically, pronunciation, we call it Egyptology speak. We would pronounce that win. And it's a hair rabbit and a water ripple beneath it. And as you can see it on my cursor right there, WN, we would transliterate it as WN without the vowels, but we would pronounce it when. Now these 4 words, we would transliterate it the exact same way, and we would pronounce them all the exact same way. When. But notice that each of these 4 words have a different determinative on them, which in essence is saying that these are 4 different words. These are not the same words. But if you just looked at the transliteration, you would think that they're the same words, because all 4 of them have WN, etc. One means open, the other one means hurry, the other one means fault or blame, and the last one means to strip off. To remove, strip off. Okay, so what's being said about the determinatives is that the possibility that the determinatives affected the voweling of the word that helped people to understand that these are indeed 4 different words, even in the spoken language. So where we would pronounce all of them when, the first one may be wan, the other one may be won, the third one may be Wayne, and the 4th one may be woon or woone, winnie, etc., etc. And so these determinatives are being hypothesized to help or to have some kind of effect or reflection of that. All right. So I'm just offering more clarity to why the question is asked and why I said what I said in the answer. Okay. So I just want people to understand that. And so more research has to be done because we cannot ascertain that strictly from the writing system itself, because it's absent of the vowels. Now, what's helpful, and this is another thing, and I'm going to address this very quickly. What's helpful is what scholars or Egyptologists will refer to as the last stage of the Egyptian language, which they call Coptic. It was during the era of Coptic writing script where they borrowed all but 7 glyphs or symbols or characters from the Greek alphabet, and they used that to write the language of Ranykemet. So I want to clarify to people, to hopefully this is understood, that Coptic is an African language. It is not a Greek language. But the Greek script was used to write the African language. And it's just that the language is called Coptic and the script is called Coptic. So people get confused and they think that Coptic is a Greek language or is a foreign language, et cetera, et cetera. And how or how you can do a comparison is like with Swahili. Swahili, everyone knows Swahili is a Bantu African language. But yet we use English characters or the Latin script to write it. But no one would dare call Swahili English or Latin. You understand? So Coptic is an African language, but they chose to use the Greek alphabet at the time to write it, with the exception of 7 characters that they took over from Demotic. Okay, but I bring that up because Coptic, it was during the era of the Coptic writing script that you do see the vowels included in the writing. So if anybody wants to know a way to pronounce these words, learn Coptic and understand that Coptic it's not Greek. Okay, the language, that is. All right, just understand that. All right, now it's not to say that Coptic is the pronunciation of ancient times and that's how it was pronounced all the time. No, but if people want to go down that road and pursue the closer historical pronunciations, or at least you be on the right path for that, learn Coptic. Just go ahead and learn Coptic. And to give you an example, like the word that we pronounce Netcher, which is the word for deity or God, in Coptic they pronounce it Nute. The word Nefer or Nefer, which means beautiful or balance, etc. In Coptic, based on the Coptic spelling and pronunciation, they pronounce it nofre. Nofre. We say nefer, but a Coptic speaker will say nofre. That's how they spell it. Nofre. Nofre. Okay, so, and at Kemet, they don't say Kemet. They say Komi. All right, so there's differences there. So, just want to kind of expound on that. And let's quickly go through some other questions before we wrap it up. Let's see. Okay, so we have, okay, went through that one. Okay, thanks. Appreciate the answer. Okay, no problem. Nehemi, which means don't mention it, or my pleasure. That's Nehemi, my pleasure. Okay, 93 Avaris. Are the Netcher invisible forces? If so, why did they use images? Were images a way to draw those natural forces? Whoa, that's a loaded question. And because I'm trying to close out, I'm going to table that for next time. So write that question down, or remember it and bring it up next time. Okay, see, y'all wait till the end. We try to wrap it up, and you try to ask the deep questions where we're gonna take an hour to answer the question. But the very, very short, abbreviated version, Cliff Note version, the short and skinny of it, the Netcheru invisible forces. See, people say that, but the Netcheru are far more than that. They're that plus some. So they're all that and a bag of chips. Okay, but that gets into a long conversation. The Netcheru. So for example, the Netcheru are categorical labeling or labeling system for a variety of natural phenomenon on different levels of existence. So I'll give an example. The Netcher that we know as Horus or Heru or Haru, depending on how you want to pronounce it. That is the deity that governs kingship, rulership. Okay? But that's not it. If you have to understand a whole lot more in order to understand what all that particular deity deals with on different levels and layers and areas of life and existence and so on and so forth. So, for example, on the surface, everyone knows that Heru is represented by a falcon, but it's the deity that governs kingship. Okay. But what less people may know is that the idea of kingship comes out of the idea of being able to circumspect things, the ability to manage things, the ability to coordinate things, the ability to exercise the will, etc., etc. So if you notice that a king is a person who's responsible for others, a whole lot of other people, a person who has the ability to micromanage and manage a whole bunch of components of a big, large machine, a person who's able to administrate, a person who's able to coordinate, I already said manage, leadership, all these different types of qualities and so on and so forth. Okay. And so that is those are social functions I just named. But then on a personal level, individual, solo, personal level, it deals with the will. And the will deals with the mind, which is this abstraction that people talk about. Not the brain, but the mind. And the ability to initiate things. You can't carry it out. The will can't carry anything out. So there's no such thing as willpower. But the will is the ability to choose. But you can't carry out the choice. That's another part of our being. So Heru governs all that and then some. So I'm just giving a few quick examples of how when people say the Netcheru are these invisible forces, it's a lot more to it than that. All right. So, just keep that in mind. But that's a loaded question. And a lot of that information in the detailed forms are things that should be discussed in initiatory environments, a very controlled, educated environment where nothing is misconstrued. All right. I noticed that our good old background music had ended. Start that back up. Okay, so he said, if so, why did they use images? Okay, the images are used. Remember, writing is a very, very young technology. Okay, in the life of human beings on the planet, writing. It would be like the equivalent of writing being born yesterday. And so there had to be devices in order to transmit information from generation to generation, where you don't have to start over. So each generation don't have to rediscover, re-experience, and start over from scratch, from the drawing board, each and every time. So there had to be a way to document and record things. And so they did it in such a ways that later became imagery, pictorial in nature. And then the writing system was invented and developed. Prior to that, it was oral. And then there was some oral magic that was done, quote unquote magic that was done to make people remember things. And this is where we get today what we call figurative expressions, where you got analogies, you have hyperboles, similes, metaphors, allegories, all these different figurative ways of expressing things. These things were invented by Africans in order to store and transmit information. Okay, so which developed into pictures and things that were used to represent visually, and then later on into a writing system that connected that which is visible, that which is heard. So a writing system is the connection or the marriage between what you hear and what you see. All right, but that gets, like I said, it gets into a long discussion. All right, so, but hopefully, I'm kind of touching on it for you. To move forward, I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Did anybody see anything else?
No.
Okay, so yeah, so I think that we, okay, 93 of ours is Brother Fortune. All right, Hotep. So, but hopefully that kind of touched on that question a bit. But I don't want to make no mistake about it that question is a loaded question though. All right, because we could take any number of the deities or the Netcheru and kind of describe their functions and what they govern, their jurisdiction of governance. Okay, I'll give another example real quick, just so people can really understand where I'm getting at, or what we could talk about. Let's take the deity or the Netcheret, Het Heru, or what people refer to as Hathor. Het Heru is a feminine deity that governs the aspect of sensuality, imagery, imagination, etc. With that's on one level. But on another level, it's the deity that's assigned to govern or have the jurisdiction over our ability to congregate things. And I'll give you an example. The reason why Het Heru is given the jurisdiction over imagery and imagination and sensuality and stuff like that, but let's deal with imagination and imagery, is because if you understand what a picture is, think about it. If you look at a photograph, or just open up a JPEG image on your computer, if you were to blow that image up or magnify the image as high as you can get, you'll end up looking at one pixel at a time. A digital image has pixels, and each image is made up of a whole bunch of pixels. The more pixels, actually, the better, the higher the resolution, but it's made up of pixels. If you were to look at one pixel, that one pixel will be a solid color. But when that one pixel is put next to another pixel and next to another pixel, etc., you can start to see a gradient, a blend of colors. Okay, so the way our minds work, we have this ability to congregate various different pixels and colors into an overall image. And our ability to do that is governed by Het Heru, which means Het Heru also governs what we do when we name things and we categorize things based on the outward similarities in appearance. For example, if you take a lion, you take a jaguar, you take a cheetah, you take a leopard. What's another African animal like that? I said cheetah, panther. You take all those animals. What do we call them? We call them felines. Now, a lion is different than a cheetah, but we still categorize them in the same larger category because of what Het Heru governs, our ability to see the external similarities between different objects in existence. And we're able to lump them, quote unquote, congregate them together. And that's what we do when we see pictures. When you look at pictures, that's what you're doing. Without you even consciously doing it, that's what you're doing. You're unconsciously congregating pixels of colors. That's all you're doing. But we call it an image. Okay, so I just want to give an example. So Het Heru will govern that ability. And so again, these deities are far more than just invisible principles of nature or and stuff like that. All right, so we got to keep that straight. We got to keep that in mind. All right, but I just gave those few examples of that. All right, what else? Nothing else. So yeah, let's end here because MC Ireland will come out and I'll keep y'all up for five more hours. So anybody on the panel have anything to close out with, because I'm just not even gonna look at the chat anymore. But I appreciate all the questions. Keep the questions coming, because it's not the first time we're gonna do this. This is this is not the only time we're gonna do this. This is our first one, but we're gonna keep this up periodically, and we welcome any and all questions related to Kemet, Ranykemet, or Sesh Medew Netcher. All right. So anybody on the panel have anything to close out with?
I was quickly gonna ask in June, what was the name of the script that you learned? Real quick.
You talking to me about earlier?
Right.
It's called Hangul.
Hangul. Okay.
Hangul is a Korean script.
All right. And it took your day.
Huh?
How long did it take you?
40 minutes. I still have the book.
Oh, wow. Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep, I still have the book. But yeah, 40 minutes, I couldn't believe it. It took 40 minutes.
Well, when was that?
2005.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
but that's just, like we explained in the book, there's different languages. Not all languages are the same. Some are real phonetic, and like the Chinese script has thousands of characters. Yeah, so they have like 14 vowels and 10 consonants, but each symbol represents a phonetic value, and it's strict. It's really strict. So it was easy to learn.
All right. Okay. Dua.
That's interesting. What you just described when you said the vowels and the consonants and everything, is that people have to understand that every language, every spoken language has a what we refer to as phonology, which means all of the different individual sounds within a particular language, and there's a limited number. So there's a cap on how many sounds a particular language has, and some languages have more sounds than others. And so when you hear people debate or try to make these claims about one language being better than the other, or one language being a bastard language or the language of the devil and all those kinds of things, once you actually learn the science of communication and language, which is we refer to as linguistics, and you learn the subgroup or the sub-discipline under linguistics, which is phonology, you'll laugh at those claims. Those claims will no longer make sense or have any validity, because you'll understand that a lot of phonology around the world is shared. Like, for example, the B as in boy, the letter B, and I'm not talking about the letter, but the sound that we represent with the letter B is technically called a voiced bilabial plosive. That voiced bilabial plosive is used in English, it's used in Swahili, it's used in pretty much most African languages on the continent of Africa, Indo-European languages, etc., etc. So people have to understand that a lot of the phonology or sounds of any one language is shared by many other languages. You know, of course, there's some sounds in particular languages that are not shared, but there's a lot of sharing of pronunciations. Okay, so you know, I want people to understand that, but that deals with phonology. Okay, something called phonology. You have phonetics and you have phonology. Both of those are, you know, kind of sister or sibling disciplines that we should all become familiar with. If we're going to have these conversations, and especially if people are going to try to attempt to debate about this stuff, you're just going to have to learn it before opening your mouth and talking about it. Because we do a lot of cleaning up rather than just a lot of good discussion. You know, we want progressive discussions about these things. And so that's what we're about. All right, we don't want to get caught up into these fruitless debates. Debates are very important and they're very beneficial if done properly. But a lot of debates that we've seen, they're fruitless. They have no validity, no merit. You know, a lot of things are just real silly. It's just, you know, becomes entertainment, which is cool. But we have to call it what it is. All right, so you know, we want to progress with this information. Have these good discussions. You know, discussions that make you think critically, discussions that's gonna make you go to the books, force you to do some research. Be like, all right, let's table this and let's you know, give me some time to do some more research on it. Let's come back to the table and see what we got. Those type of things. Yeah, that's what we should be doing. But anyway, I don't want to stretch this out any further than I've already done or we've already done. And so June, did you have anything to close with?
No, thanks for all the participation. We appreciate you guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you part of our Facebook group too. That's about it. Shemem Hotep.
All right, Emiket, anything close? Or you can close us out.
All right. Okay. So duau, and make sure that if you have any more questions that we haven't addressed, or if you come and think of more questions, just put them on our group page. I think it's the group page is the link is shared below the video that you're watching right now. So make sure that you do that and share the videos, and make sure that you buy the books, especially the book that we talked about today. A lot of questions were you know, around those things that we've covered in that book. So make sure if you haven't bought the book, get the book, and that's the book, the decipherment book. And yeah, I guess that's just it. So dua, yeah, that's the one that you see on your right side that has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system being deciphered, a rebuttal to Walter Williams, and that's by us, Seshew Medew Netcher. So make sure you get that and the other books as well if you're interested in learning the language and just progressing the conversation. And yeah, dua, and get an affair, which is good night if you're in the nighttime, or back on affair if you're in the morning time. And Shema Motep, go in peace.